Hey, good afternoon. Scott Luton, Greg White, back with you here on Supply Chain Now. Welcome to today's live stream. Greg, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm really looking forward to this. We're entering this whole new world of virtual instead of physical events, and we got a pro to talk to us today. So
we sure do. We got a great guest on the front end of today's live stream, and we're going to make, of course, we're going to pull our audience on virtual events on the back end. So stay tuned. Today's show, we're going to be speaking with a thought leader, as Greg has alluded, from the world of technology, especially procurement best practices and end-to-end spend management. So stay tuned for what should be a very informative discussion that's going to raise and increase and optimize your supply chain IQ. All right, optimize. So quick programming note before we get started. If you enjoy our live streams today, be sure to check out our podcast, wherever you get your podcast from. Today, Greg, we published a really interesting conversation we had this week with Richard Schrade.
Yeah. Wow.
Co-founder and president with Automation Intelligence, right?
Yeah. If you ever wondered what digital twins are, and I bet there are hundreds of thousands of you out there who have, listen to this episode or watch it. He not only explains what they are, but how they can be used, and man, is it powerful.
It's outstanding. Really sharp individual, and they've jumped out of the gate working with some big names.
Yep.
All right. So right before we bring in our featured guests here today, we want to give a shout out to a couple of the folks already on the stream with us. Patrick Kelly via LinkedIn.
Produce man.
Yes, the Produce Podcast Guru. Patrick, great to see you again. I think twice in 1 week. Neza, great to see you. She was with us yesterday on the LinkedIn on live stream. So great to have you back. And let's see. Juanid is also with us via LinkedIn. So hope this finds you well. Great to have you here as part of the live stream conversation today. All right. So Greg, let's dive right in with our featured guest here. We've got Chris Haydon, President of SAP Procurement Solutions. Hey, Chris, how you doing?
Hey, Chris.
Hey, Scott, Greg, very well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to have you, man.
Great to have you here today. Really have enjoyed some of the earlier conversations. And of course, which we'll touch on in a minute, we're gearing up to a big week next week.
Yeah,
that's going to bring the global community together. So, but for starters, Chris, we've had a chance to get to know you a little bit in our warm-up conversations. Let's give the same opportunity to our audience. So tell us about yourself and your professional journey a bit.
Yeah, sure. Thanks. So I'm originally from Australia. I call that the deep, deep South, not just the deep South. And I've been in procurement a long, long time, more than I care to remember. And look, my experience is, I started doing computer science, business computing out of school, and then went promptly to work directly in procurement. I did 10 years as a practitioner on working at operating sites, running purchasing offices, warehouses, logistics, supply chains. Wow. And then, in 2000, got into a startup, really driving business networks for supply chain and direct collaborations and driving that. And we did that business, grew it, ended up getting acquired by a company called Ariba, which then acquired SAP. And then I've had a number of roles in there as a chief product officer, as a chief strategy officer, chief customer officer. And then recently took on board running or leading the procurement solution area for SAP. And so how we focus on all the end-to-end outcomes for our customers in conjunction with supply chain.
Holy cow. So when did you officially join SAP in your current role as president of Procurement Solutions?
So we made a great big organizational change to really focus on bringing all of our procurement solutions under one banner to drive these outcomes. Of course, we managed to do that March 1st. And we also kind of know how the world and a lot of changes have overtaken us, certainly in the last quarter. So it's been an amazing time as all of our customers have had to refactor all their supply chains, right, and their procurement chains, as we've all seen in our personal lives, at the same time as bringing together a new strategy to go and accelerate our lead in the market.
So what people would have known as SAP Ariba before is now SAP Procurement. Correct.
Yeah, think of it as an umbrella. Like we still go to market. We got the leading brand in procurement in Ariba. We got the leading brand in contingent labor in Fieldglass, and of course we've got the amazing digital core that is SAP, right? And the ERP and S4 particularly. And so really what we're hearing from our customers is, honestly, we love your product names. We just need outcomes. Where's our supply chain continuity? How do you deliver us the lowest cost? How do you identify intelligent risk in supply chain risks? And how do you have a beautiful user experience? And so it's our job just to now orchestrate that, irrespective, if you like, of what the product name is.
Yeah, I love that focus on outcomes, bottom line performance. That's going to be really important. It's always been important, but these months ahead, it's going to have a second seat at the table, perhaps. Hey, real quick, before we dive into SAPPHIRE now, Greg, let's give a shout out to Kyle Garcia. Kyle was with us earlier this week. He's on the West Coast, an Apex board member, and Kyle, hope this finds you well there in Portlandia. Okay, so Greg, let's dive in next week.
Well, we Scott and I and a number of other folks are ambassadors for SAPPHIRE now, Converge, and excited to see what you all are doing to kind of change the game in terms of how virtual events, physical events turn into virtual events. And I know you have a great story about doing that in less than a week, but also what you see as your expectations for SAPPHIRE.
Yeah, look, we're super excited. And I think this pivot to digital or virtual events is just amazing. And historically, SAPPHIRE was 30,000 people, in that level. And a lot of practitioners, fantastic. Now we're opening it up for free. So you can imagine 25,000 people putting a lot of money in travel and expense and an admission fee. Right. All that great content, all that great. And what's most importantly, too, with our digital events, we're really investing in the ability to network, kind of like what you guys are doing here as well, because you need to take that feedback where you can in the event. So we're really excited about that. I personally believe, SAPPHIRE, Converge, and now we'll have record smash attendance. We pulled together our procurement event, our SAP Ariba Live, earlier in the year in 4 days' notice. And I was telling you guys, normally we have 3,500 people in the room, probably the biggest single procurement event. We had more than 100,000 views of our keynotes with a lot of playthroughs. So, you can imagine SAPPHIRE, who knows, 1 million, more, 2 million. It's going to be really exciting. And the content is so focused about the individual line of business or the economic buyer or the outcome owners. And I think that's a real testament to what SAP is trying to do here.
Yeah. Well, hey, real quick, Greg, if I may, I admire what SAP is doing by opening up what has been for years, all these outstanding conversations kind of behind, closed doors, customers and what have you, to open that up to the world. That is, it's what we need right now. And to see SAP do things like that, of course, we're big fans of the Automotive Industry Action Group, which is one of the first groups to take their physical event, go virtual, and then open that up for the world as well. So I really admire what you are doing.
Yeah, I mean, we saw their event go 5x what the attendance they were expecting to what they got by opening it up virtually. And as you said, Chris, that takes all of the travel cost and time away from home and all of those factors out of it, and allows people also, if they're there for just a segment of it, they can just focus on that aspect of it, right? Yeah. I was looking at your very first presentation, which includes Christian, your CEO, Alicia, your Chief Marketing Officer, DJ, the President of Americas, Scott, Steve, and Lutz from Porsche. Porsche, I mean, I'm really impressed with your executive team, but Porsche is the one that got me. and I'm really interested in that. So I love the accumulation of people you're bringing together, both from SAP and from industry, to show how that convergence occurs. And I think it will be really, really valuable for folks. And
I do too. And I really think you'll see, the emergence of SAP really embracing the digital economy, not just in the event, but in our products, right? Yeah. And I think that's front and center to where we're at. And, Christian's got a great vision for the business and a great vision for our customers. And I think you're going to hear and see some pretty exciting, announcements, as usual, is what we normally do. Right. On the back of that.
That's great. So tell us a little bit about what you see as some of the topics, or, what are some of the issues or topics that you expect to present around procurement?
Yeah, well, a couple of things now. I mean, if you didn't believe that the network economy is here, well, welcome to the reality we face in our personal lives when you walk down the retail store and see the empty shelves, right?
Yeah.
Supply chain and procurement is front of line.
Yeah.
And so how are we helping our customers accelerate, their digital transformation? But underneath that is, how do they get the insight into their supply chain risk, whether that's with their suppliers through procurement or their execution through logistics and everything in between? So you're going to see a lot of that. You can also see about how we're trying to bring together not just the physical network of supply of materials, but also the people networks, right? It takes people to deliver supply chains. So how are we helping with like talent acquisition identification? How are we helping with identification of where there's supply chain problems? Because unfortunately, some of these businesses are under a lot of stress. So how can we give the larger buyers in the value chain visibility into the distress, right, through transparency in the business network, to ensure the continuity of supply?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, you sure got an impressive lineup. I mean, you've got leaders from Chobani, 538, and one of my favorites, Adam, even from Mythbusters.
Yeah.
So we know that everything will be facts-based and provable, right? Because Adam's going to be right there.
So Greg has shared.
Yeah.
So Chris, Greg has shared some of our favorites and certainly some of his favorites. You've got a plethora of great speakers next week. What are some of those folks that you're really looking forward to that you think our audience, the global audience that will be a part of it, are going to really enjoy?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'll selfishly just little talk to our channel, and like, this is what I also love about it. We've got these, channels within Converge. You want to know about supply chain and manufacturing. We want to know about procurement. You want to know about people. It really is customized to you, and with each one of those, a pretty immersive experience. So, just within procurement, we've got some great customers across the board. When we talk about HCL, or we talk to Chief Procurement Officer of Vodafone. I mean, there's some really interesting content and how they're going about, facing some of their supply chain challenges. Yeah. I've got a great kickoff with Alexis Glick. She's a CEO of the Gen Youth Foundation, but a pretty well-known person. We had just a great debate going on, and we got a really great thought leader on, Peter Hinson, who's talking about. He has a fantastic book, but the new normal and the role of technology, and that in itself is. You can take yourself a little bit just out of the technology and understand the environment we're working in. And I think that's what Peter brings to that bit. And that's just one slice in procurement. I think there's some other fantastic things we got in supply chain as well, and how we're really marrying this, the procurement in the supply chain in the new One SAP network.
Love that. All right. So, hey, real quick to our audience, if any of you all are already registered for the event next week, chime in and we will give you a quick shout out. Looking forward to a full week next week. There is no shortage of content, but that's the world we live in. The global end-to-end world of supply chain and business. No shortage of topics ever, including during these unique times that we're working through. Okay. So, Chris, as a call to action here, how can our audience members, learn more and get engaged with SAPPHIRE Now Reimagined?
Well, yeah, I mean, number one, let's go back to the thing. They say back in Australia, there's no such thing as a free lunch. Well, guess what? I mean, SAPPHIRE Now Converge is free. So do yourself a favor, right? Yep. Just find it. There's the Google search now. Just go and look for SAP SAPPHIRE or SAP Now Converge. We got our channels. We got Christian just kicking it off with a fantastic keynote, as you mentioned, just to set the framing and the stage for the whole of it. And then we've got progressive rollouts of our channels during the course of next week. So look out for the procurement channel, SAP Now Converge Procurement, or you want to look at supply chain and manufacturing, SAP Converge Now Supply Chain, and you'll find it all there. And look, just go register. Again, it's free. Opt in as you want to. And just sift through that content, which we really think we've tailored to make it, one, digestible, too. These are not like 2-hour-long rhetoric things. These are the right level of crunch and focus and interaction that we want to drive across the board.
Yep. All right. So do you have time for one question from our audience?
I have as much time as you guys want to give me.
Okay. Hey, real quick comment from our friend Fred Tolbert. He's out. He is a supply chain Hall of Famer, and Fred has been really busy. So great to have you back on the live stream, Fred. And then so Claudia. So Claudia has been on the show. We love what she's doing over at EAL Green. She's got a question for you, Chris. So how do you see the quality of business networking changing in the digital versus the in-person world? And, based on what you've gathered, based on the events you've been a part of, and certainly what your team is baking into next week, any tips for those that are looking to optimize those online events?
Yeah. So look, business network is changing, but it's still about people relationships. I think what we've demonstrated is we've broken the back that a pile of people need to fly on a plane to see another pile of people, right? But I think that the sentiment is there's still this huge value in getting together, once to go and establish that and drive that forward. So I think that dynamic does not change, but the frequency does. Number two is I think these virtual sessions and the Zooms and the Teams and everything in between, I think they're fantastic. What I feel like it's actually helped business collaboration, and we found that. We have an internal employee pulses powered by our Qualtrics piece to see how people engage. And looking at you guys rather than being on the phone and we're all doing our emails, we think there's that better connection. Tips for virtual, virtual, digital, cloud. Customization, context, boilerplate, cookie cutter, repurposing does not resonate. Authentic conversations that are punchy to the point is the key for in my opinion, for the virtual events. So have that right mix. You have to get your message out. There's no point. But I think bringing that outside in and being very punchy and very contextualized really, I think, drives a much better experience. Now, whether it's virtual or digital, but on virtual events, I think we're learning to embrace that piece. And the open mic sessions where you can take questions on the fly like this, we get fantastic NPS and user sentiment for those events that we do.
Yep. Well put.
Yeah,
all right. Quick comment as we wrap up with Chris here from SAP. Our dear friend Felicia with the Reverse Logistics Association, a great group there doing some thought leadership, forward-looking thought leadership in the world of reverse logistics. They are learning from a lot of things that Chris and SAP has shared. Other groups are learning to bake into how can we make it more engaging with these virtual events, but Chris, what I heard you talk about is making it more authentic and really playing up the relationship factor, which is so important. So, well, Greg, before we let Chris go, what was your key takeaway from what Chris has shared here?
Supply chain, procurement, I would argue they're segments of the same thing, though. And we had this discussion a little bit, Chris, yesterday. They are segments of the same solution, right? Rather than being separate solutions. I think this is a great opportunity to see those two converge. But also to recognize that because they're in the forefront of people's minds, now is the time to learn from the leader, the largest supply chain technology company in the world, and see how they're making things happen. It's free. I'll say it as Chris said it. It's free, so why not? Learn, because no one is in front of SAP on supply chain right now.
Yeah, well put.
Not even close, guys. I mean, and you're dead right. This convergence of source to settle, order to cash. We have more than 3 trillion of commerce going across our SAP networks. We have millions of suppliers going across our SAP networks. We're doing logistics. I mean, we're linking that to the best applications with S4 Core and all of our great supply chain procurement apps. I mean, there's so much learning on the how-to that can really change business outcomes. And that's really what SAP is all about.
Yep.
Love that. Well, Chris, can't wait till next week. Thanks so much. Again, really admire how technology and business leaders like you are building these bridges and building these global communities when the industry needs it the most. So thanks so much, Chris Haydon, President, SAP Procurement Solutions. We will see you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Chris.
Wow. I'd like about 2 more hours, maybe.
I was just thinking that. First of all, fantastic communicator, aside from the fact that he's got a tremendous amount of expertise in procurement. So his company Quadrum, who was bought by SAP or by Ariba then into SAP, they had their own special place in procurement, and they made a lot of inroads there as well. So he's top of the stack, man. It really interesting, really insightful. It sounds like it's pretty easy for him, and they're fortunate to have him leading that organization. Clearly,
great group. I mean, from what we've experienced in the last few weeks, the energy and the information, the intellect, and the purpose, the intent of what they've created next week. I'm really looking forward. This is it's been a little while. I mean, frankly. There's so many virtual events these days. I mean, but this is got a ton of potential, being extremely unique, highly informative, and such a great resource for the world to take advantage of. All right, so this is what we're going to do for the rest of our time here, Greg. We've got a big topic we want to pose to our audience, get them to weigh in on. We'll do that momentarily. I want to recognize a few of the folks that have joined the stream. Of course, we talked about Felicia and RLA. Felicia, great to have you back on today's live stream. Love what you and RLA team are doing. I know y'all, between webinars and some of the other events, RLA is on the move for sure. We also have Stefan. Stefan is back, who is down in Texas, right?
Stefan and I have been having a long discussion around the future of work, not the entirety of the conversation, but where people will work and how they'll work now that they've sort of been freed by so many of the companies and so many of the most expensive places to work in the world, right? Yep. Palo Alto and the Valley and other places. So that's been an interesting discussion, Stefan. Thanks.
Yes. And thanks for joining today's live stream again, Stefan. In fact, we will share exactly where you are having that conversation for everybody to take advantage of here momentarily. That's right.
An important discovery, Scott, just real quick on that.
Yep.
Like many families, I discovered Stefan is from the mountainous portion of Germany, and his wife, I think he said, is from the plains. She is what people call beach tribe or mountain tribe, and he is beach tribe. So there's some internal conflict there. If they are able to live their most joyous place, they might have to buy two.
Hey, that's not my budget. I don't know about y'all's. All right. So Rob Morris is tuned in via YouTube. Rob, hope this finds you well. He asked if we're going to have Chris's info up at the end of this live stream. What we have done is there's a direct link, make it really easy for you to check out SAP Sapphire now. That's the direct link we do have in the show notes based on the YouTube.
Yeah, I saw that Ursula from SAP posted that in there. Ursula Ringham.
Yep.
Posted that in there as well. Yeah.
Yep.
So, but yeah, you can find him on LinkedIn.
That's right.
Chris Haydon, Haydon.
Yep. Ian McLean looks like he is tuned in via LinkedIn. Great to have you here, Ian. And okay, so let's pivot. I got to strike my my vernacular of that word. Let's shift gears and let's talk about a couple of upcoming events we have. And then to our audience, we want y'all to start thinking about, and would love for y'all to comment on the virtual events that you've been part of here in 2020. We've been there for months. We're probably going to be there in this virtual landscape for months to come. What have you really liked? What have you not liked as much? What's been successful? What has been underwhelming? What are your experiences? We really want to pick your brain here today on today's live stream. Okay, so I'm going to bring there we are, into the stream here. So a couple of upcoming events before we learn a lot more from our audience. So on June 25th, ERP is going to be, and how we're using the ERP platform in the post-pandemic environment is going to be really important. We've got a great webinar coming up June 25th with Tom Brennan with Rootstock. We'd welcome you to join us for that session. And
I think it would be really interesting on the Rootstock to go through the SAP discussion, and then which is very top of the stack in terms of ERP, and then see the perspective of a cloud native ERP, and how those those perspectives differ and converge. There's that word again. The confluence of those two perspectives, right?
Yeah, great point.
Both are leading us into the future.
Definitely, not a doubt. And then a really special discussion on July 15th. We're going to be having a very frank, interactive, global discussion on race and industry. We all, we've got a lot of challenges there and a lot of change that needs to take place. And we're continuing to serve as a vessel to help fuel the dialogue and facilitate it. And we'd welcome our audience to be part of that very special event as well. And then I did not have a graphic for it, but on June 25th, Greg, you're part of an event as well, right?
Yeah, June 25th is going to be a very busy day because right before our webinar, I'm doing Procurement Foundry's Forge, and I'm hosting a panel session with Joe Main from Papa John's and Paul Emmer from Edible Arrangements, all around last mile delivery, gaps and opportunities, and all of the things that have kind of been exposed by COVID-19. I got to tell you, I'm sure there is a lot that traditional or e-commerce retailers can learn about last mile delivery from companies whose business has always been delivery.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be really interesting to to communicate with those guys and see what's going on.
Agreed. It sounds like a great session and another great virtual event for a nominal fee to be a part of and learn from. And of course, Greg, you're going to learn from anything he's involved in. So, and you're going to have a good time doing it. So
that's right. That's the important part.
Hey, we talked about an interesting dialogue that Greg and Stefan from the live stream was having earlier. And I think it kind of spilled over from a live stream and it kind of played itself out a bit in our Supply Chain Insiders group, which is a new group on LinkedIn. It is a subscription group. I'm not the group expert on LinkedIn, but I think we've already had 200 members in 8 or 9 days. So if you enjoy what we do here at Supply Chain Now and our programming, and especially if you like to get involved and jump into the conversations about all the topics across global end-to-end supply chain, join our Supply Chain Insiders group on LinkedIn.
The main feed is there's so much going on in the main feed, and we know there are a lot of people that want to talk to us or talk to our following or talk to the people that we share time with on the episodes. So it's a great opportunity to open some dialogue. Our goal is to open dialogues and have the discussions right there in the group.
Yep. Great point. Okay. Now this is where we're going to really spend the remainder of today's live stream on this topic of, in-person events, which of course were so prevalent here in the States, really up until the first week or two of March. And now everything is in that virtual landscape. A lot of the folks that we're talking to, even into the fall, even as late as October, are shifting all of that over if they haven't already to virtual. There's a couple of folks that are doing and taking the right approach at doing in-person events in the fall that we've are connected to. But we want to learn from our audience here, right, Greg? I mean, in this virtual landscape, whether it's a 1-hour webinar or if it's a 1-day virtual event or if it's a massive effort like next week's SAP SAPPHIRE Now Converge is, where you got a lot of moving pieces, a lot of top tier speakers, that community component, which is so strong and so important these days. We want to hear from an audience. What do you find successful and engaging in these virtual events, and what do you find not so much successful and engaging? Greg,
the world has changed, right? And there are a lot of options out there. Seems like mostly webinars are the option, but there are so many potential vehicles for having these discussions. It can be kind of a one-way discussion like a podcast or a vlog. It can be two-way like these live streams. It can be two-way also, where you can learn about a specific topic or a specific company's offering with a webinar. There are lots of ways to deliver all of those things. We know, we can see it, the invitations to these kind of events. It could be informal, right? Happy hours. Sarah Scudder and Sarah Scudder and Sarah Barnes Humphrey both have happy hours every week. And It's great opportunity to blow off steam. We're doing something we're calling entertainment with the trivia. Though it's entertaining for us, for some people, I feel like it's a lot of stress and competition, right, Scott?
Right.
But we're really curious, and that we're really responsive to what you ask us for. We want to shape how we deliver content to you based on how you'd like to do it. We have a lot of discussions. My particular interest is around webinars, and if yes or no, right? And if yes, then is there a particular way that makes them more valuable or useful or consumable?
That's a great point, because if anything has proliferated out by the thousands, I mean, of course,
literally by the thousands.
Yes, it's been webinars.
Yeah.
Which has really been interesting to see. So, tell us what you think. One thing on the entertainment, that seems to be one very popular trend and needed trend. I mean, that's why we were doing and are doing the supply chain trivia. We had a great event just last week with the great folks at SAPPHIRE down. They're based in South Africa, but they do a lot of work across the continent of Africa, across global supply chain, and doing a lot of neat things there. And, it's been a call to kind of take a step back from all the stresses of this current environment, whether you're in supply chain, frankly, or otherwise, and find ways of building camaraderie and enjoying fellowship while a little friendly or fierce competition. That seems,
friendly
both.
And fierce.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right. So, I think the other thing about big events like next week is the ease of which it is for the audience to plug in, right?
It is. Yeah.
I mean, that is so critical, right?
We keep talking about AIAG mostly because they were the first. Although based on what Chris told us, they made that, I'm going to say it, Scott, pivot. Within 4 days, they had an event, and they found out on March 12th they needed to get to virtual, and they did it. Of course, you would expect them to be able to do it, but that still is no small task. And as he said, they had an incredible turnout, and likewise, AIAG had 5 times the turnout that they were expecting for the in-person event. And I think companies have to rethink. And companies have rethought it. We've talked to other companies who we'll be working with in the future who are doing their events in different ways as well. And, we have to think about how you obtain the value from these things as the sponsor or host of these events, and how you assure the value for the attendees. I think of as more of an attendee than a host, though at Blue Ridge we have our own annual customer community event. But you go to NRF, you go to Modex, you go to all these shows, and it put in stark relief when we were at Modex that the feeling largely for a lot of companies is that they are conspicuous by their absence at these events.
Right.
And many of them, because they had the time, because the turnout was not great, many of them expressed that they don't feel like they get the return on investment that they would hope from an event like that. But again, they feel like they're conspicuous by their absence. Those kind of events that leave attendees and sponsors with that feeling, those events are in trouble. Yep. Events that are, as Chris talked about, are authentic and engaging. Those are the events that will last. And we've got to figure out how to do that virtually as well as physically.
Yeah, great point. All right, so we got a couple of comments that we're going to be sharing here as folks have started to share. Our dear friend Corinne Burst, a friend of the show, technology supply chain Hall of Famer as well. Corinne,
yep.
Great to see you. She says, no substitute for face-to-face, but virtual allows you to, 1, engage with a wider audience, 2, access at a time that works for a variety of schedules, which is really important.
Yep.
3, go back and replay or share valuable content that would not have been able to attend via face-to-face. What a great series of points there. Of course, Corinne has been putting outstanding shows and conversations on for quite some time. So I love that perspective, Corinne. Great to have you be a part of the live stream today.
So the challenge that I would put out, and Claudia asked about it earlier, the challenge that I would put out to companies hosting events is, how do you facilitate the networking? And again, Chris nailed it with his discussion. I think, this is only half joking. I think the power of a bar cannot be underestimated. And the power of being able to pull someone aside from a group and be able to focus you and them. There is a virtual way to do that. If you've ever been much of a gamer, you know that you can do that. So I think sorry, Siri, she didn't understand. I think that the virtual events that will endure and that will capitalize on this will figure out how to do that as well. How to allow people to have those one-on-one or three-on-three discussions, around a virtual bar.
So great point there. One other thing here, I just got a text from Tara, and she says, selling from the podium has never been worse. So
is that right?
That's a really important point, because, I think in this landscape of digital content, thanks for that comment, Tara, you got folks that have been producing content for years and years, and they know the value of how it needs to be agnostic, and it needs to be really interactive, and folks need to be able to share and respond and whatnot. And then you got some folks that kind of take a different approach, and it can be an infomercial. And in 2020, especially in these challenging times we're going through right now, who wants to sign up and hear an infomercial for an hour, right?
Selling from the podium. Yeah, right. I mean, and especially if you're ambushed with it, right? Yep. I mean, we know, we've seen it and studied it, and I lived it. I mean, I've sold in this environment. People are doing 70 to 80% of the research on a company to determine whether they want to do business with them before they contact them now.
Yep.
And the ability exists for you to do that. And it is up to you as the listener, as the attendee, to give that permission to be pitched, right? To hear that value proposition. And it is up to frankly, it's up to the companies that want to pitch to earn the right to do so.
Yeah.
And the beauty, I think, of this environment we're in is that as companies filter down those folks who are just interested in the people or just interested in the thought leadership, but then ultimately become interested in the message and the potential solution, when you filter down to that, you should be able to have a very, very focused audience who's interested in hearing a pitch or a value proposition or a case study or whatever, and you have to earn the right as a business to do that. You have to earn that relationship capital.
Well put, as always, Mr. Greg White. All right, Stefan weighs in and says, and by the way, to our audience, for folks that may listen to the audio track of this live stream, is why I read these off. So bear with me.
Yeah.
Stephen says, I enjoy the webinars, saving a lot of travel time and still get the most of the value. Networking with other participants is, of course, exponentially more difficult. Good stuff there from Stefan. Corinne also agreed with you, Greg. You're right. Live events are incredibly expensive to produce, sponsor, and attend. And we've all heard about the travel budgets that, of course, that have been largely eliminated because of the environment we're in here.
Some companies won't travel the rest of the year, and large ones, right?
Mm.
So that is going to have an impact on these physical events throughout the year.
Yep. Claudia, this is an interesting comment that certainly is part of, and this kind of goes back to the virtual bar points you were making, Craig. Claudia says, hey, I wish there was a best practice process to move a business contact along the relationship continuum. Great point. Hey, when you find that best practice process, Claudia, please do share with the rest of us.
I can't describe it, but I know it when I see it.
Okay, right? I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah. I mean, you do know it. You just know it.
Yeah.
Right.
Let's see here. Amanda is weighing in. So Amanda, of course, our CMO here at Supply Chain
Is she
Now.
right there with you?
She is
Weighing or is she in her office?
She is in one office over.
Okay.
So Amanda, of course, not only is she a part of basically virtually all of our virtual programming, but a lot of other with great groups like showme50.org.
Right.
Amanda says relationship building is really tough in virtual events. As Chris said, when and if you can create a way to build relationships through different channels, chat rooms, Twitter chats, Slack channels, you name it, prior to and during virtual events, they will be that much better and more valuable. Authentic experiences are hard to create in virtual events, but if you can do it, it's gold. Excellent comment.
Always
there,
insightful.
Amanda.
And shameless self-promotion. If you didn't listen to our show last Friday with Amanda, go back and do it. I think is it 370, episode 372?
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
Sounds about right.
It has Amanda in the title. So,
and you can find it on our if you go to supplychainradio.com, go to the library page. The episode Greg's referring to is one of the last 3 or 4 episodes published, and it was it was Amanda's first one after 371 or 72 episodes that she is in front of the microphone, front and center. We should have done it 372 episodes ago.
Some great and surprising 373 says Clay. Thank you, Clay. 373. Some great and surprising the result of Amanda's discussions at Show Me 50 around people wanting to get back to the workplace versus work from home.
Yep.
Worth a listen.
Great point. Our dear friend Memory, who is based in Johannesburg, hopefully this finds you well, Memory. She says, I'm enjoying those webinars that are more series formatted with more best practice content. That is an interesting comment. Because as I think back through all of the webinars that we've been a part of, going back 8 or 9 years, I think we've only taken a series approach once or twice. And so that might be, I think folks may enjoy that installment expectation, right?
Well, I mean, I can completely see it. You learn, right? And the way that people value learning about a company or a person these days is to learn what their expertise is, what they can take away from it. It is, to Claudia's point, it is kind of a moving a relationship along. It's, do we share a worldview? Do I share your future view or your current view or your philosophy on how you approach supply chain today? And if I do, let's learn more. And, maybe someday we do business. The truth is that these virtual environments allow us to do that and progress personal relationships as well. I mean, we've seen it happen, right?
Hey, I'm going to read this comment from Jim, but Clay, I'm going to kind of put you on the spot. I'd love to, in your perspective, what are you enjoying from a virtual standpoint? I know, still taking some of your classes. I imagine that a lot of that is remote. I bet you've got some instructors that are outstanding remote leaders and facilitators, and some that aren't. So I'd love to get your thoughts if you have a minute. Okay, Jim makes a great point here, and this is also a text in. Jim says prioritization is so important in the current overload era. You've got to pick your spots. That's an outstanding comment. I mean, if you wanted to, you could podcast, webinar, and live stream your life away week in and week out. And when I read Jim's comment here, it reminded me of industry certification. There's a certification out there, a 1,000 of them, thousands and thousands of them. But really understanding what, the journey you're on and what you value and what you're trying to accomplish or what you're trying to get better in or what community you want to build relationships in, really picking your spots is so important right now. Greg, your take.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you've got to put everything in its rightful place. I don't know how to even if it's a virtual rightful place. That's, I mean, the opportunity to capitalize on this seismic societal disruption and the coming change of our environment. Every day, I'm more convinced that there will be a new normal. So you've got to position yourself for that.
Yep, great point. Hey, Fred. Fred says Scott and Greg should be worried. Amanda is the new supply chain now rock star. Hey, I didn't think we were ever rock stars, but it doesn't surprise me that Amanda is our rock star. It was great to have Amanda be on this side of the desk, so to speak. And Fred, always a pleasure to have you a part of our programs here, and looking forward to our next couple of episodes with you and perhaps the supply chain team over at UGA. Okay, so Greg, as we start, and I've got about 1:45 Eastern time, we're going to start to wind this down here in the next few minutes. If you are speaking to, we get a lot of inbound inquiries from friends of the show and folks, whether they are, they're supply chain leaders tackling new initiatives or leading new growth, or just fighting through the challenges of the day, right? Or they're new to industry and they're trying to plan out their career journey, right? Or their next steps from a professional development standpoint, or perhaps they're in transition, like unfortunately a lot of folks find themselves in right now. When it comes to virtual events and when it comes to these opportunities, it's a mix of professional development, like some of these incredible sessions that are going to be a part of the SAP event next week, and it's also a mix of making connections and building your network. What are a couple of best practices that come to mind to share with our audience here that may be trying to figure out their own path forward?
I think Chris nailed it with authenticity, right? Don't force it. You'll know it. You may not be able to describe it. There isn't a best practice, but you'll know it when you hit it. There are plenty of people who can teach you about networking, but networking is a lot different than developing a relationship. And I think a relationship is much more important than networking. You don't have to know a lot of people. In fact, I'm a big proponent of taking this saying and turning it on its head. Lots of people have said over the time, and this was said often when probably you were in school, certainly when I was in school, Scott, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I would argue that it's not even that. It's not who you know, it's who knows you, who really knows you. Lots of people know me. I know lots of people, but if they don't know me, they don't know the value that I present. They don't know the potential that I have, or even the flaws that they need to work with and overcome, right? So I would say let people get to know you even more than you try to get to know them.
Love it. Good stuff there, Greg. All right, so Clay weighed in, and Clay, part of the team here at Supply Chain Now. Clay shares it's really forced people to make an effort to build and facilitate relationships virtually. I've made so many new valuable connections that I possibly never would have had pre-pandemic. And that's been great to see. He shares one of the comment here. A sense of community has never been more important. So many people are striving to create that for themselves and for others. Good stuff there, Clay. Appreciate you sharing. So much to think about. Our friend Sadie is back. Big hey, every day is a new normal. That's a good tip. Absolutely. Great to have you back, Sadie, and hopefully this finds you well in the part of the world that you are thriving in here. Okay, let's share. Again, to our audience, we've made it easy. I think we've got a direct link to the SAP SAPPHIRE Now Converge event. Again, free registration. We've got that in the show notes of today's live stream. We have got the direct link for the June 25th webinar about ERP best practices in the post-pandemic environment in the show notes. And we've got the July 15th event in the show notes of today's episode. And, again, Greg, we were sharing, I can't remember if we put it in the body of the, I think I put it in an email or something. When we kicked off that Stand Up and Sound Off series, and we planned for it back in December, we officially kicked off maybe in January. We had no idea. And we knew what we wanted to tackle because we didn't, we love the audience interactive, their observations, their ideas, what they're seeing. I mean, that's one of my favorite parts of this whole journey we're on. So we wanted to create a whole series that is fueled by nothing, less of us talking, and frankly, as much as we love our panels, less of our panels talking, and getting our audience really to be the star of the show. However, you and I had no idea, the whole team had no idea, none of us, of what 2020 was bringing to the table in terms of challenges, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a new normal every day, right? As Saeed said, it's a constant change. And I think this is an important outlet for people. We want to provide it. We want to give voice to the unvoiced, and make sure that everybody has the opportunity to share their piece and be heard and have a productive, peaceful dialogue.
Yeah, that is, we're all figuring out where we can make the biggest impact in terms of the change that needs to be made. And, for us, using our platform to bring people together and have the uncomfortable conversation, which you got to have to change anything, it's a very important project for us, and we're looking forward to that July event, and we'd invite all of our audience to be part of it. Much lighter note, Steve Keaveney shares a great show as always. Fantastic job, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend. Steve, really appreciate that.
I want to know where that avatar generator is. That is pretty cool.
That's right.
Hey, I think we've met Steve in person. I work with him and on other projects, and he actually looks better than that avatar. So.
Oh, good stuff there. Good stuff. Stefan shares, as we start to wind things down, an advantage I see that online, most of the noise is gone and the content is more important than ever. That's interesting, because you almost think intuitively it could be reversed. But I think, maybe in person, when you've got 50 minutes for that webinar, or you've got 50 minutes or whatever for the podcast, maybe folks get down to the nitty gritty, the important stuff, and take some of the fluff out. I'm not sure. That's an interesting observation.
I mean, it's happening in how companies are adjusting their supply chain, how retailers have focused. I mean, if you take toilet paper, right, at Kimberly-Clark or GP, from 16 SKUs down to 4 SKUs, that's more focus. And people are doing the same in how they're focusing their lives.
Yep.
Instead of focusing on 16 things, they're focusing on 4 or whatever. So
great point. Speaking of consumer goods, we're looking forward. We've got a couple of big shows. All of our shows, we enjoy each and every one of our guests. We have really recently nailed down a couple of upcoming interviews. You're speaking of consumer goods. We're featuring Rick McDonald, a supply chain leader with Clorox, in an upcoming interview. Looking forward to hearing his perspectives on all the great things that the Clorox company has been doing to keep up with this unusual time we live in.
Yeah. And so if you have questions around Clorox or Clorox wipes, Rick is your man.
Yeah.
And operations at Clorox. We had a really brief call with him earlier, and it was great to hear how early they started preparing, and yet even then could not anticipate the incredible uplift that they've seen for their product.
Yeah, great point there. So if you have questions for Rick, feel free to pass them along, and we'll try to bake that into the run of show with him making a repeat appearance with us. Sylvia, our workforce guru, amongst other things, says, greetings from Charleston. She is making blueberry and strawberry jam for her neighborhood food drive and listening to us as she does so. Great to have you, Sylvia. Always a pleasure. Love your commentary through each of these sessions. And Steve says, back on his avatar, Steve Keaveney says, hey, the avatar has hair. So, hey, we got to get that avatar generator.
Yeah.
I was going to share one other thing right before we wrapped. I cannot remember what that was. It comes and goes sometimes. In the meantime, we'll read this comment from Claudia. Hey, thank you, Memory Mathema, for your positive energy and generous presence. Our mutual respect is an example of how we can build relationships in the digital world. Great commentary there, Claudia. All right, so let's share how everyone can learn more about anything, I believe, that we have chatted about today. SupplyChainNowRadio.com. Of course, there's something that is not there that or you can't find. Feel free to shoot Amanda a note, the Supply Chain Now rock and roll star, a note. Amanda at SupplyChainNowRadio.com. Again, we try to make things easy. The main events we talked about, including that big event next week by our friends over at SAP, who's generously, building and offering this great program to the global community for free.
Right.
That direct link is in the show notes. Be sure, even if you're not sure if you can make it, register and take advantage of at least a couple of sessions.
Yeah.
But check us out. Anything else you need, any of the resources we have here, supplychainnowradio.com. Well, hey, Greg, before we wrap,
yes,
your final comment or two.
Well, I love this trend. This trend towards more inclusive and less expensive, more for less, more inclusive, less expensive events. I think this is a great opportunity, and Chris probably couldn't say it on the air. I'm going to say that I'm paraphrasing him when I say, why didn't we think of this before? Right? I mean, as he said, they get 35,000 people or so at whatever their rate is, but now they could get 1 million people to attend this thing. And the information sharing and the value to the 44 million supply chain professionals just in the United States.
Yep.
And the nearly 700 million around the world, the value of that is incredible. So imagine if he's wrong and it's an order of magnitude higher than that. And it could be with the number of people in supply chain around the world. It's very possible, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Hey, what is not possible after all the surprises we've seen over the last 3 or 4 months? So nevertheless, really appreciate all the comments and observations and the participation from today's audience on today's live stream. Big thanks to the SAP team. And of course, Chris for joining us on the front end of this. To our audience, check us out. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to check us out and subscribe wherever you get your podcast from. On behalf of the entire team here, including Greg and Amanda and Clay, Scott Luton here, wishing you all a wonderful weekend. Hey, do good, give forward, be the change. And on that note, we'll see you next time here on Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.